love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, guys? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts. Coming at you with an episode of the insight for the UFC 243 card. Before we get into that, I made a poll on Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker. If you haven't voted on that poll, click on the community tab on this channel and smack a voting, because we're like 250 votes right now. I think it's 46% to Adesanya, 54% Robert Whittaker. It's very close. If you haven't voted on that poll, go and vote on that poll. As always with these episodes, this is just my personal feeling this weekend with the odds. If you're picking against anyone that I mentioned, go ahead, knock yourself out, pick them. I'm not telling you to pick any of these people. This is just my personal preference. If you like this personal preference, great. If you disagree here and there, I'd expect that also. So, yeah, let's get into it. Start with underdogs. Actually, no. We're going to start with slight favourites this week. Now, the reason why I want to pick these two guys, I'm going to give you two slight favourites. I would have mentioned these in my underdogs if this episode came out like 2 days ago. But they have changed from underdogs to very, very slight favourites. So the reason I'm still mentioning them is because these lines are still playable. The two people who were underdogs, now they're slight favourites, Justin Tafa and Israel Adesanya. We'll start with Justin Tafa. So this is a heavyweight fight between Yorgan De Castro, the guy who had the very first fight on this season's Contender Series. It's a heavyweight fight and anything can happen. So Yorgan De Castro showed us that hard low calf kick. Maybe he comes out and has some technical game plan and he's able to get a good win. You know, he's an underdog now, Yorgan De Castro. But if it isn't that, and if it's just a slugfest, stand and brawl type of fight, Justin Tafa has got some decent heavyweight power. I mentioned him. I said, you know, this guy's the next Mark Hunt. Maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but at the same time, you know, I just finished watching his MMA Junkie interview, and he's saying, look, I'm only 3-0. The UFC came knocking. I've already had the walk-offs. You can really see that this guy is trying to be the next Mark Hunt, and if we get that type of fight where they're just going to stand in front of each other and throw down, I think, you know, the guy who trains with Tuivasa, Mark Hunt, has walked out with these guys, has felt that same energy. I think he's going to be the guy who lands that huge, devastating heavyweight shot. So Justin Tafa was a slight underdog. He's now like a -110. So Justin Tafa, I'm feeling good about his line. Israel Adesanya, you know, another underdog who's turned a very slight favourite as the week's gone on. You know, how can I not bet on this guy? I've taken him in all 6 of his UFC fights, and you know, I'm just not going to stop now. This is the biggest fight of his whole career, and what a fight it is. I know half the people listening to this right now do disagree, and you're taking Rob Whittaker, and that's completely fine too. But I think Israel Adesanya still has a very good line, only -110. Both guys, you know, Whittaker and Adesanya, they have very playable lines. And whatever side you're sitting on, that's cool. But I have to mention that Israel Adesanya is only a -110, and he has a very good chance of being a very good champion in Rob Whittaker. You know, a very, very good champion. I just think that layoff, man, that 16-month, 17-month, whatever it is, this is a really tough fight for both guys. But I just think Israel Adesanya, he's been so active. He's just been a new breed, you know. He's the new modern day Anderson Silva. He was able to go 15 minutes with that chess battle against the guy who he is. You know, he had that 15-minute fight with Anderson Silva, and for some reason, some people look at that fight and go, oh, he couldn't even finish Anderson Silva, but he learned so much. He learned so much in those 15 minutes, and that's what we need to realize with this guy. In all of his 6 UFC fights, he's learned so much. 25 minutes with Brad Tavares. A lot of people, that was a pick'em. I'm sure that was a pick'em fight, and a lot of people said he's going to be taken down, he'll gas out, this is 5 rounds. And Adesanya looked so fresh in that 5th, just learning, picking up information. And then, Gastelum, he goes through adversity, gets rocked twice in that fight. And in the 5th round, he wins 10-8. Just championship quality from this guy. So, like I said, you're listening to this. Half of you listening will be on Rob's side. Half of you on Israel's. That's completely fine. I think it's a great championship fight and very playable lines on both sides. Okay, moving into my underdog pick. So those 2 guys would have been the underdog pick, but they're slight favourites now. So I'm only left with my other underdog pick on this card, which is Raging Alaya Quinta. This fight it's a tough one to pick. It's a very tough one to pick. But at plus 130 for Al, those are very decent odds. I think Hooker also like minus 160 has very good odds himself. But I think if Al can just turn this into I understand and I'm a better MMA guy than you. If he can kind of come in with that game plan where he's showing Dan Hooker, look, I did get caught with Donald Cerrone's knees coming in, but not everyone's just going to do that to me. If Al is able to get that takedown, able to hold Dan against the fence, implement his own calf kick, start ripping to the body when he's in close, then it's going to become a very interesting close fight. Al's very well-rounded. He's a very well-rounded guy. And not anyone's just going to beat this guy. He's a decent guy at 155. And he's not going to sit at distance and just let Dan Hooker just score from a distance. He's going to get in close. Dan knows he's going to get in close, which Dan is going to try and time that devastating knee that he seems to be knocking guys out with. I'm not taking anything away from Dan. He is going to try and time that knee. So it's one or the other. Al's able to get on the inside, look for a takedown, or Dan just keeps timing him with knees and elbows, and is just an elite striker over Al. So very interesting fight. I think both lines are very playable. If you're taking Dan Hooker, that's also a very good bet. If you're sitting with Al, I think his odds are very decent too. Okay, moving on into parlay builders. Now, I'm not going to lie to you boys, this card is a tricky one to bet on, and I don't really have a strong tactic. It's just one of those cards where you're doing doubles and trebles, but the odds aren't too great, and you can't really stack too many people together. But if I was pushed to play around 2 people, it would be Brad Riddell and Maki Pitolo. I'd choose these 2 guys to build around. Brad Riddell minus 150. Now that's the exact reason why I would build around Brad Riddell. I'm only going to have him in 2 parlays because I'm not extremely confident, but I am picking him, and he is only minus 150. So he has a line where if you're fairly confident in Brad Riddell, you could probably put him in 2 or 3. He's a very, very talented kickboxer. He is so much a better elite striker than Jamie. So if it was just kickboxing, Brad Riddell would smoke this guy. But it's not. It's MMA. Now, last week, a lot of people said to me, look, you're picking Chikadze, that's a bad pick. Very good kickboxer, but Brandon Davis is going to grapple. Now, a lot of people need to realize a huge part of MMA is also kickboxing. So if we have a guy who's a very good kickboxer but not known or not too good at grappling, we can't really just disregard that he's a great kickboxer. We also have to appreciate that he's a very good kickboxer. Now, MMA isn't just grappling; it's a mixture of martial arts. Now, to have a guy who's such a good kickboxer come into the UFC, that's already a very good start. Now, just like Chikadze, Brad Riddell is a very, very good kickboxer. So if he can keep it on the feet, if he can stuff takedowns, look to move when he needs to move, I think he could smoke this guy. So minus 150 Brad Riddell, I like that price. Maki Patolo minus 300, I'm a little bit salty on. It opened at like minus 150, which I would have packed him in like 3 or 4 parlays at that price. I didn't get him at that price. I'm only going to put him in like one parlay, which is I got him at minus 260. But if you got Maki Patolo at like opening price, then you must be having a great time. This guy's going to be fighting Kalen Potter. And you know, same kind of thing. I think if Maki Patolo keeps this on the feet, he just outworks Potter, probably finishes him to the body as well, or just takes his head off. This guy throws a lot of strikes, and looking at his Contender Series fight a few weeks ago, this guy's dangerous. So Potter's gonna try to implement takedowns, look to shoot in as soon as he can, as often as he can. And if Maki keeps it on the feet or even ends up on top with that takedown, you know, he could pound out Kalen Potter. So minus 300, it's not the best price. It's pretty deep. But if anyone's willing to smack down a fair bit of money, and you know, the balance in risk and reward is something I really focus on week to week, and minus 300 it isn't the best, but Maki Patolo I really like him in this fight. I think he's going to have a very good debut. Okay, moving on into the last two. I've just realized I've mentioned 7 people in this episode, so yeah. Most confident picks, Megan Anderson and Tai Tuivasa. So these two, I would expect them to just really show us here, look, we're not going to disappoint you. We're not going to disappoint you. We have disappointed you, but look, we've got 2 opponents here who we're going to wipe the floor with. So Megan Anderson is a very big girl for 145. She should be much stronger than she is. She needs to work on that. I can only assume that she is working on becoming a stronger version of herself. But she has an opponent where the girl, she's pretty limited. Like, she just walks forward with her hands out, throwing these jabs, and she tries to end up in the clinch where she throws knees and sometimes looks for a takedown. But if this fight is kept on the feet, I think Megan Anderson is gonna just showcase, look, this is why I'm in the UFC. If I can have this type of fight, I'm gonna look very good. Problem with that is she's not going to get this type of opponent every fight, and I think at minus 500, you know, a few of us may be going, look, Megan Anderson hasn't been very good, she's minus 500, there's value on her opponent. I wouldn't disagree with you, but just taking numbers away and looking at just the fight itself, I think Megan Anderson is pretty much going to shine in this fight. And same with Tai Tuivasa, man. Like, minus 400, it's a very deep price. I'm not going to touch either of these two, but if you took away all the numbers and still asked me who are my most confident picks, it would be these two, because once again, man, Tuivasa has an opponent where if he can just keep this standing, I think he's going to just make his opponent crumble. I mean, you look at his debut against Walt Harris, and the guy, I said in my breakdown just a couple of days ago, he's beat half decent competition before entering the UFC. Spivak, that is. But in that debut, man, he just did not look UFC caliber. And I think this fight is practically tailor-made for Tai Tuivasa. So if it stays on the feet, I think Tuivasa is going to get it done pretty quick in the first round. Okay, guys, as always, put down your underdogs, your slight favourites, parlay builders, finishers, most confident picks, all of that lot. Whatever you feel on a fighter, just smack it down in the comments. And like I said, if you haven't voted on that poll, go to the community tab, vote on the poll, subscribe if you haven't, like the video, do all that kind of stuff. And I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the Tampa JJ versus Waterson prediction breakdown card. All right, guys, peace.